Hey, party people. It's Brandi and Cesley. We're back with Blooming Through Faith, the podcast that helps you grow and bloom in your mindset, lifestyle, health, and wealth. We want you to know that you are capable, beautiful, and worthy. Make sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a rating on the podcast so more people can find and listen. Okay, so today we're going to talk about a really serious topic. You're going to be like, what do you mean? But when we unfold it, it's going to make so much sense. And Cesley and I have been talking about this a lot past few months because we've been going through it a lot, right? And we're going to talk about the invisible mental load that we carry as women. Again, we want to help women grow and glow, and we just like to be very transparent and real. So there's things that are going on that we don't realize that are going on. And there's so much that we as women have on our plate. All right. So I'm going to kick it off to Cesley, and she's going to start with what is the invisible mental load? And then we're going to talk about 5 ways to fight against it.
Yes. And this is a big one for us because we are both we run our own businesses. We are moms. We've got about 17 balls in the air that we're juggling at all times. So how are we working towards a happier, healthier, more positive life without burning out? What is the invisible load? So it can be sometimes referred to as worry work or cognitive labor. So it's like it's not necessarily about the physical tasks, but the overseeing of those tasks. So I know a lot of women right now are going, oh yeah. So the mental load is about being the one in charge of the never-ending to-do list, the constant running in your head, remembering what needs to get done and when, the delegating of the tasks to your family members, the making sure that everything gets done. Like, it's the constant calendar and to-do list in your head, basically. So think about all of the things that you coordinate in your life and in other people's lives. The doctor's appointments, the groceries, the schedules. It's the being the one who makes the lists. That is the person in the household that carries the invisible mental load. So first thing, before we even start, I want you to shift your mindset on the invisible load, because talking about this can create a lot of anxiety. It can already have you start to think about, well, yeah, I do all of that. And how am I ever going to be able to take care of my family if I'm constantly having this list and I can't carry it all and I can't do it all? So I want you to remember that the challenges and joys of motherhood, caring for and guiding children, running a home, being in a relationship, running a business, working a job, adulthood, like whatever you as a female, we all are dealing with different things, right? We don't all have kids. We don't all have spouses. So whatever you're dealing with in your life, the challenges and joys of this is an immense responsibility, but it's also a great privilege. Like, dealing with all of this means that you have things in your life that you care about and that you have people around you that trust you deeply. Like, you have people that care enough and trust you enough to let you handle their entire lives. Like, so what we want to do is tweak the communication and daily habits to stop you from feeling like you're underwater all the time.
So I love what you just said. I want to just jump in where you said it's a privilege, right? It's a privilege to have this quote unquote mental overload, but it reminds me of like a house. Like when you're looking around in your house, and I said it the other day. I was like, oh my gosh, this house is never clean. There's stuff here, there's stuff there. And my dad looked at me, he goes, the house is lived in.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Aw,
yes.
I
And
love
that is a
that.
beautiful thing, right?
Yeah.
Because these moments, like Cecily and I have smaller children, right? So these moments we're never going to get back. So we could look at it as, oh my gosh, it's never clean. Or we could look at it like my dad said, it's lived in. And how blessed are we to have these babies and have food and have X, Y, and Z and have a house that is lived in.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, and specifically your dad, because I went to go visit my dad last week and he said the exact same thing. He goes, yeah, my house is really quiet. Because I walked in and I was like, it's so quiet in here. And he goes, yeah, all the kids are grown. Everybody's left. And so I know it can be really hard to take that perspective. And you're probably like, whatever, Cesley and Brandi, because you're probably just going through it right now. And we get it. Like, we're going through it. Brandi was up in the middle of last night because her baby was up all night, up and down. The other day, I had a puking toddler. Well, she's like almost 5 now. She's not really a toddler, but she was all in my bed, just puking all night. So we get it. Like, we know what it feels like to be in the middle of the stuff. But it's also great to just, while we're talking about it, have the perspective of it won't always be like this. And so
Yes.
how do we love the space we're in without feeling like we're drowning, right? So I
Yes.
love that. It's lived in. We're going to talk about how to be able to be in the lived in space. So the first thing is really number one on how to fight against this invisible mental load is setting clear expectations and boundaries. And we've talked a little bit about this before, but it's really important. So if you have a spouse, if you have family members that live with you, if you have roommates that live with you, because there's a lot of people. My younger sister listens to our podcast and she does not have a spouse. She has roommates. She has people she's in a relationship that she lives with and stuff. And so this can even be as simple as that. Who is in charge of what? You have to dictate that, because as a woman, just generally, if we don't do this, then we will be in charge of anything that we care about, because we
Yep.
want to see it done well. So if you don't put someone in charge of it, you will end up being in charge of this. I love my husband dearly. I preface this because I'm about to say, if there is something that I see that's out of place, the chances are that he's going to notice that as well are slim to none.
Mm.
He does not notice it. I have to specifically say, hey, babe, I have a really busy day today. I need you to be in charge of X, Y, and Z. I cannot be in charge of this. I'm officially handing you the keys to that. You are driving that car. And if I can look him in the eye and tell him that, he's like, okay, I got it. But I have to be able to specifically set the expectation. Otherwise, I can't get upset if it doesn't get done because someone doesn't notice that I'm flustered or that I'm overwhelmed. So you have to be able to set that expectation. And then part two of that is you have to make the list. I know we're always like, well, I shouldn't have to make the list because they're my partner and they should know what to do. But if it's something you've been carrying for the majority of your relationship with someone else, they don't know that it's something that you need passed off. One thing I learned with my husband is I am a very independent woman. I came into our marriage with two small boys. I was a single mom. I was running my own business. And so there was a lot that I did by myself that I just continued to run forward with by myself because I didn't realize that I could pass it off to a partner. But then I was starting to hold a little bit of a grudge against him because I was like, well, why doesn't he do these things? Why do I do them all? And he goes, I would have helped you if I knew you wanted help with that. I didn't know because you just do it all. You just seem like you can do everything. I'm like, that's great. I don't want to. I don't want to do everything. Like, I don't want to do that. So you have to, at first, this is going to sound kind of strange, but you have to kind of train other people in your household to take the things on. So you have to make the list at first. If there is something that you are currently doing that you would like to release as something you're no longer in charge of, you have to give it to someone else and give them the details on how you'd like it done. So for example, I am great in the morning. I'm a morning person. I love it. By the end of the afternoon, I'm starting to go downhill very quickly. So the afternoon activities are really hard for me to take the kids to. By the end of the day, I've done so much that I'm just exhausted. So I had to sit down and tell my husband, I need you to take the kids to their afternoon activities. So now when he gets home from work on Wednesday afternoon, he knows. He immediately drops his stuff. He grabs the kids. He takes them to Taekwondo. We don't have a conversation about it every single week. I don't have to ask him to do it every single week because I've told him very specifically, this is my boundary. This is something I need for you to take off of my plate. And so now he knows it's his responsibility, balls in his court, but I had to tell him that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I love it. Talking about releasing control, we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So that's number 2 is releasing control. What I want you guys to do is kind of take a seat, take some time. And what is that mental load? What are all of those things that you have on your to-do list, right? So Cecily gave a few examples. I'll give you some of mine, right? So I pay the bills. I make the doctor's appointments. I take the kids to the doctor's appointments. I have my numerous businesses. I take the boys to school. I take Troy to school, right? So just all of those things, right? We share the household work when it comes to, laundry, dishes, depending on the day. So take some time and really write down what are all of those things, okay? What are all of those things? And then how can you release some control? And we're talking about right now in the household, right? How can you ask your spouse, like Cecily just said, how can you ask your spouse for help, right? So the other day, I did all the laundry. I put the laundry away. My text message to Mitch was, I need you to put your laundry away because I don't know exactly where you need it to go in the closet. And I need you to replace something in the shower. Like, this is what you need to do. And guess what? He did it. And that's kind of, and it is that like kind of honey to do list in some sorts of guys want to help out. They just need that guidance, right? And then there's no animosity towards us because they're great men. They're willing to help, but they can't read our minds, right? So make that list. And then how can your husband help? How can your kids help, right? Just like the chores, kids should absolutely, my son is 4. He is helping with me with the dishes. Did he actually clean them? No, but the fact that he wanted to help mommy is so great, right? Same thing with the laundry. Like, I'm teaching him those things. His one chore, Cecily, is feeding the dog, and he does that every single day. That's his thing. And just teaching him those things. Like, what can your spouse, what can your kids kind of tick off of your list? There's a book, I don't know the name of it. I'm going to find out for you guys. We'll add it to the website, but it was such a wake up call listening to this book, right? Because as women, I feel like most of us are born, with that mother instinct, right? So when it comes to taking care of our spouses, taking care of our kids, taking care of other people, doing X, Y, like that just comes naturally to us. Well, now a lot of us also have jobs, right? So before, a woman's main job was to stay at home with her family, right? And then was to cook, was to clean, was to make sure the babies were taken care of, right? And the husband's job was to provide. Unfortunately, in some situations, times have changed. And fortunately, let's say, unfortunately, how awesome is it that we are women and we are business owners and we are entrepreneurs and we have the right to be in the workforce? It's great. However, that mother instinct never changed. So not only do we have our 9-to-5s or do we have numerous businesses, we also have the mom stuff. And we have this guilt, Cecily. We have this guilt and this need. And guys don't have that, right? Of having to, they just don't. They're like, hey, we talk about this with Tommy Mitchell all the time.
That. It's okay.
Yeah. They're like, that doesn't need to be done. That's not a big deal. Oh, Mitch tells me all the time, like with our 4-year-old or 4-month-old, I leave to go get my nails done. And he's like, okay, go ahead and do X, Y, and Z. I was like, no, I don't want to be gone for more than an hour. I don't want to be, He's like, Brandi, go do this. But it's that guilt inside of me, right? You know what I'm talking about, Cecily?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and I think, I make this joke with Tommy all the time that I was like, whoever invented feminism, like, I'm here for it, but I'm also not here for it. Because we got all the perks, right? Like, hey, we get to go, we're going into the workforce. We're going to run businesses. We're going to rule the world. But who's making dinner?
Yeah.
We still have not dropped the things that we do at home, but we've picked up extra things along the way. And I'm like, first of all, we need to figure this out. We need to get organized. And sometimes that means like passing some things off.
Yes. And we've talked about that before, right? Like getting help with the laundry, a laundry service, getting help with the groceries being delivered. Like those things will help. And actually, I'm going to go on a little tangent. I'm going to do it. Do it. Okay. So I've seen on TikTok quite a few times about, Cecily and I, we love and we respect women, period. We are here to empower women. But unfortunately, what I've seen on social media is there's women on both spectrums looking down upon each other. For example, it's like in this day and age, women feel forced to have to go up a corporate ladder and be a leader and be a boss babe and be X, Y, and Z. And if you're not, then you're not good enough. And that's not the truth, right? And making some women that might choose their path, and they were born to be a stay-at-home mom. Their most important job is going to be a mama on this earth, and that is beautiful. But making those women feel less than, or vice versa. If a woman doesn't want to have kids, if a woman doesn't want to, stay at home or even get married, she doesn't have to. Do we all realize that? Do we all realize how beautiful it is that if we decide we want to go one way, we want to go the other way, if we want to combine them, and a lot of women do, but we've got to figure out how to release that load. But all I'm saying here is I think no matter what path life takes you and God takes you and what your purpose is on this earth, that is beautiful and you are worthy and you are going down the right path, and do not let anybody else bring you down. Do not let anybody else make you feel less than. And I will say this right now about stay-at-home mamas. Much respect.
That was hard.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't just be a stay-at-home mom and not have a career. That's not who I am. I think that's the hardest job. because you lose yourself so much, right? You lose yourself. And okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to stop the tangent. I'm going to stop it. But that's what we're talking about here. Most have a nice combination of both. And we've got to really release that mental load, right?
Yeah.
And how do we do that? First, we're going to make that list and we're going to start delegating even in work, right, Cecily? Even in business. A lot of type A personalities, we feel like if we don't do it ourselves, it's not going to get done right.
Yeah.
However, Cecily's laughing because that's the truth about us. However, if somebody can do it 70% as well as you can, then that's good enough. Okay, you have to release some of that load. So just like your to-do list at home where you're going to have your spouse, your family help you a little bit, same thing with work. Who can you delegate to when it comes to who can do that 70% as good as you, right? So allow others to do small tasks so that you can focus on the things that are really important to you. Figure out what is really important to you, right? So is housework more important or taking the kids to the park, right? So like yesterday, I took my boys. It was a spring break day. We did a lot of things. One of my businesses is having a promo. I didn't do much work with that, but what was important to me in that moment, I had the opportunity to be a present mom. And so that took the place. And then I did the work prior to, so that other people were taken care of. Does that make sense? So like you can have the best of both worlds, but at the same time, you got to figure out what is important to you. Right.
And
Cecily, do you?
Yeah, just to add to that, it also can change day to day. Like, don't feel like this is a permanent thing. Like, there can be a day, for example, if my kids have a ton of schoolwork and activities on one day, maybe that night I'm asking my husband to pick up a frozen dinner and saying, "Hey babe, you've got to take dinner because we are so busy." And then the next day, I'm going to be really intentional about saying, "Okay, I want to make sure that I slow down, that I get the kids here for dinner, that we have a homemade at home dinner, and that's going to take priority over other things today." Like, it can change day to day. You don't have to do everything brilliantly every single day. It's impossible.
Yes. What was the last thing I was going to say? Just because Mitch does listen to our podcast, Mitch actually cooks most of our meals, you guys.
So does Tommy.
So I'm just throwing that out there. So I try to do the dishes because he's, making the meals, right? So it's like, it's that compromise there. All right. Cecily's going to take over and she's going to talk about number 3.
Yes. So it's really, really important when you're carrying the invisible load that you make sure that you are practicing some calming techniques, okay? Because chances are you're losing your mind all the time because you are carrying this load in your head that no one else understands. And let me preface this by saying, like, we are all living life from our own point of view. So while I am thinking, I have all of this stuff on my to-do list today, and I'm just using my husband as the example because he's the other partner in my, in my home. He's usually pretty great at stuff, but I'm sitting here thinking, what is he doing? Why does he seem so calm? Why is he walking around this house getting ready for work? Like, we don't have 20 million things to do today. However, I have to stop and kind of take a step back and go, have I actually expressed my needs to him in a way that he understands? And while it is not your responsibility to explain to your partner all of the things that need to go on in the house, I do fully believe, and I might get some like flack on this from other women, but I do fully believe that as a woman and as a person in a relationship, it is my responsibility to know how my partner communicates and to try to learn how they communicate, to communicate their way. I can't just say, well, they need to understand how I feel and they need to know what I need. No, boo-boo. They might not understand how you communicate. You have to change and be willing to. I mean, you don't have to. You could sit there and hold a grudge for days and years and months and just be mad at your spouse forever, Or you could say, okay, my husband, he's a thinker. He takes information, he walks away, he thinks. I used to be so mad at him all the time because I used to be like, he does not care about anything I just said. He didn't respond at all. He totally just walked away. Meanwhile, he's over there trying to process, come up with a plan to what I've just talked about, come up with a solution. And then he comes back like 2 days later and he's like, okay, I've written out a to-do list. I've made you a calendar. Like, he has all these solutions. Meanwhile, I'm over here just mad at him for 2 days going, he doesn't even care about what I said. So you have to make sure that you are not getting so worked up about your invisible load that you are not trying to communicate with other people what you need. So don't be a husband hater, is what I like to say.
I like that. Don't be a husband hater. Also, kind of what I've done, Cecily, is like when Mitch does something, and it's funny because we're women. We're just going to be honest. Like relationships aren't always rainbows and butterflies, right? So if Mitch does something that irritates me or upsets me, or we've talked about before but hasn't changed, you know what I do? I look at the other things that he has done that week, all of the beautiful, wonderful things he's done and how he's an incredible father and husband. I'm like, am I really that mad about X, Y, and Z? No, it's not even worth bringing up, really, because it's not that big of a deal. And what I used to do, and this is, maybe I got it from my stepmom. Okay, we're going to go back. I used to clean I hated cleaning the bathroom. That was one of my chores. We were talking about chores earlier. Anyway, my stepmom would go around and she would like, oh, it's not clean here. It's not clean here. Well, that made me not want to do it anymore. It made me feel less than, right? And I actually did that with Mitch and a few things because I am a very type A when it came to cleaning. I'm like, you didn't wipe down. What? There's this. I did that at the beginning of our relationship. Now I don't. If he missed a spot or he did what, I'm like, baby, thank you so much for cleaning. Thank you so much for folding the laundry, even if it's not the way I would fold it. I appreciate that he's doing that. Yeah. Then if I wanted to fix something, I will do it, but I will never let him know. Okay. Yeah. And that's what we kind of have to look at, right? I know it's a little tangent
it's that 70% mentality. You have to be, if you can either have peace or you can have perfection. You cannot have both. You will never have both. It's impossible.
Peace over perfection. Like progress over perfection.
Yes. Love it. Look, we're growing with you right now. Okay, so practicing calming techniques is number 3. So make sure that you are this is a daily practice, y'all. We carry a lot as women, a lot, and we see you. We know what you carry. Okay, you have to be practicing meditation, prayer, calming techniques. Okay, the invisible load can carry a physical toll on your body. You're going to be carrying around extra cortisol levels. Your stress is going to be higher. How can you release that? Make sure that you're either going for a walk, getting 15 minutes of fresh air, and exercise somewhere in your day. If you're feeling like water's getting higher, you're starting to drown, stop everything, go for a walk. Prayer is a really good thing to do at this point. So for me, when I'm starting to feel that mental load take over, I have to stop and go, okay, you know what, God, this anxiety is really the enemy trying to bring all of this down on me and make me feel like I'm not capable of doing this. But I know that you have already planned out my day. You have already planned out my future. There is nothing I cannot do with you guiding this car. So really putting it in the hands of God and saying, I know that you've got this. So all these little things I'm stressing out about, help me to have peace right now. Help me to have quiet right now. Help me to not look at the problems, but to look at you instead. And then Brandi is really phenomenal at talking about meditation. So I'm going to pass it back to her for this one.
I appreciate that. I've gotten better at meditation. And I know the more I do meditate, the calmer my spirit is. And so meditation is so important because it helps with stress reduction. It helps improve concentration. It helps strengthen the immune system. It helps you with your sleep. But it's going to take time for you to grow in that meditation. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this for 15 minutes, don't. Do it for a minute, do it for 2, do it for 5 minutes. You can find a lot of different meditation practices on YouTube. If you have Peloton, they have a meditation practice that I love. Sometimes I do it first thing in the morning. Sometimes I do it right before bed. We've talked about this before on the podcast, but I've struggled with different issues when it comes to sleeping, and having a nighttime routine and incorporating reading and meditation before bed has helped me a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And a big part of this is when you start to pray consistently and you start to practice meditation consistently, a big part of this is asking yourself, like, what lies are you believing about yourself? Because the first thing that's going to start to run through your head as women who carry this invisible load, when you start to have quiet time, either with God or quiet time in meditation and just practicing that, just pausing, your head is going to start to spin because that's what it's used to doing. It's used to running with all your thoughts. So you're going to start saying, I'm not good enough. I don't have this done. I need to get this done. My kids don't think I'm a good mom. My business isn't successful. This won't be done right. This needs to get done. I need to order groceries. I need to are you going through the list in your own head right now? which is why it takes practice, because you have to address the lies. Like, and I call them lies. Like, I don't even call them anxieties or thoughts. I call them lies because that's straight up what they are. Because it
Yeah.
is your mind just lying to you. I can't do this. I can't do that. I have this. This is too much. Nothing is too much. Nothing is too much.
Or I was gonna
Go
say,
ahead.
or you have to. So
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing with this mental overload is as women, we feel like we have to. It's
Yes.
like we have to work. We have to have the house clean. I mean, listen, my husband isn't like you have to cook, clean X, Y, and Z for me. No,
Yeah.
we
I don't
we
care.
do both things together. They don't care. But something inside of me, I'm like, oh, I need to have the house clean before Mitch gets home from work because he worked so hard.
Lies.
Like I didn't just work so hard. Like I didn't
Lies.
just work all day
Right.
with the baby, right? That's all lies. Your value isn't in how clean your house is. What? What are we even
Mm-mm.
talking about?
No, I love that. I think that goes right into kind of your next topic, which is number 4.
Yes. Number 4. So stop comparing your life with others. Okay.
Yeah.
So much of our mental load comes from thinking that we have to have all these things taken care of when we don't. And we always like to talk about people's highlight reels. So you see inside people's houses and it looks so clean. It's so that. No, when Linda is going live, she had just cleaned her house. Okay. Linda does not
Left
have a
everything in a
perfect.
corner.
Yes, everything is tucked under the bed or in a
Yeah.
corner. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So don't compare yourself to other people because most of the time that's not the truth. Or maybe you're looking at an influencer's house where they can afford a house cleaner, right? Or maybe that's something that you and your husband look at in your budget. Like when we talked about the laundry service, we talked about the groceries being delivered. Well, maybe you and your husband look at your budget and maybe you can afford somebody to come and deep clean your house once a month. Maybe that is. But if it's not, that's okay, right? So
Yeah.
don't compare yourself to anybody else. And we've said this before in the podcast. Don't compare your chapter 1 to somebody's chapter 10, somebody's
Mm-hmm.
chapter 20. All right. So important. Remember that you don't have to have a life that looks like anyone else's. And I love that because I feel like, again, going back to that social media, we look at Linda or we look at Lucy or we look at Laura, all the else,
All of
because
the L's are
all
just
of the
the
L's are
worst,
just, they're just
apparently.
perfect. And we think that we have to have the car, we have to do the things, we have to have,
Yeah.
the perfect homeschool schedule. So here's the deal. I'm looking at Cecily homeschools. Guess what Brandy's never going to do? It is, and sorry, my friends,
Right.
it's not in the cards for me. Now, do I have the utmost respect for Cecily, my girlfriend Katie, my girlfriend Heather, that all homeschool? I absolutely do. But that's not who God called me to be. It's not in the cards for
Yeah.
me. And that doesn't make me less than, right? So
And
go ahead.
oh, well, I was going to say, and the judgment that we put either on ourselves or other
Mhm.
people too. Like, there are some homeschool moms that I like co-op with and do life with who I love very much, but sometimes they say some things and I'm like, you're sounding like a real judgy person right there. Like, this is why
Mm.
people don't like homeschool moms, because
Yeah.
they're like, I could never send my child to public school. And while I'm very honest about our homeschooling journey, I have 3 very different kids. And I had one, my oldest son was really struggling in public school. And I was watching him and I was like, he is not the kid who's going to thrive in this environment. Now, I did great in a big school environment because that's just who I was. I'm very social. I loved all the things. I loved all the people. I was involved in a million different activities. I was captain of my cheerleading team. Like, I thrived. My son, I was watching him choose to go in these directions. And I was like, we're going to fix that real fast because my children are my blessing and responsibility. And I don't want to put my son in an environment where I think his personality and the beautiful things about him were getting stripped away. And so I'm very honest about my homeschool journey. Maybe we'll do a whole different episode about that and y'all can kind of learn a little bit
Yeah.
about that. But never once am I judging someone for like, oh, that kid's in public school, that kid's in private school. Like, we're not here to judge other people. And a lot of that is why we put on this invisible load, because we think, even in homeschooling, when I first started, I was doing all these different things because of what I saw other moms doing. And really, now that we're like solid pros at this, there's a lot that we do that other families don't do. And there's a lot that we don't do that other families do. And I'm like, this is what works for us. This is what makes my life happier and less stress. Like, I don't need to teach y'all every single subject. I don't need to do, like, there's a lot that I outsource now that back in the day would make me feel really bad about myself because I would think I have to be teaching my kids everything. And now I just don't, because I'm like, that's not why we did this. And a lot of times when we start getting into the nitty gritty of this to-do list, and like Brandi said, the things we feel like we have to do, we lose sight of why we started doing something in the first place. Like, why do you love having a clean home? If you're someone who's like, I have to have my house clean before my husband gets home, is that because you have a joy in having him have less stress when he comes home? That's beautiful. Take it with a grain of salt. Maybe there's one thing that you can do to make sure that happens. It's not everything,
That's good. That's good. I'm going to go to one more tangent. Okay, let's
Oh,
do it.
do it.
While we're
Love it.
talking about women, and while we're talking about judgment, and just because I, just had a child, and one of my sister-in-laws just had another child, I see this a lot. There's a lot of judgment when it comes to how you choose to feed your child. Here's what I'm going to say. There are a lot of women that cannot breastfeed. I do. It's my choice, right? There are a lot of women that can't, that try, but because society makes women feel like they have to, some of these women are putting so much pressure on themselves, and then their baby is not getting enough food in, and they're feeling like they're a failure. That is not the truth. You are not a failure. Not everybody is able to, and that is okay. Or maybe you do. I actually donate some of my breast milk to a mom that lives down the road. Her baby was in the NICU for 53 days. And I know I'm so blessed to have the opportunity to do that, but her baby was in the NICU for 53 days, and it was hard for her mentally and emotionally, and just talk about all the stress that comes with after baby. And so she stopped pumping for a little bit, and she said to me, she's like, I'm so disappointed in myself. I mentally couldn't do it, and I can't get my milk back up. I said, stop right now. You should not be disappointed in yourself. The fact that your baby was in the NICU for 53 days is so hard. You tried. I'm going to help you. And it's the same thing with, whether you have a vaginal or a C-section or whatever. I see so much hate towards that, and I can't understand it. So the way you decide, and whatever happens with you personally when it comes to feeding your baby, as long as your baby is fed and loved, great. Maybe you're not able to have a child vaginally, or maybe you just don't want to. My mom had 3 C-sections. I didn't judge my mom because of that. She's like, I'm just not going to do it. She was a labor and delivery nurse. She's like, it's just not happening. Right. So anyway, I'm sorry that I go on that tangent. I say it because women, we never know what other people are going through. And I can't even understand judging somebody for something like that. If you know that their child is taken care of, they are loved, that is all that matters.
Well, and also, just to piggyback on that, we don't really have a right to know. Like, a lot of times we think that because we see people on social media that we have unfiltered access to their lives. But let me tell you something right now. If you're feeling like you have to explain yourself, and this is a big one for me, I know I've talked about it in the past. If you feel like you have to explain yourself to anyone around you for your decisions, you don't have to give them any explanation. I have 3 different children who I fed in all different ways when they were born. One was breastfed, one had formula, one had very special, specific, very expensive formula that he needed. I've had 3 C-sections. One was an emergency. The other 2 were elective. I probably could have fought harder for a vaginal birth. I didn't, go judge somebody else. You have no idea what anyone's going through, and they don't have a right to ask you, really.
Right.
Like, it's your business. And as long as you are being kind to others and opening your home and your heart and your life and yourself to them, and you're not hurting others, they don't have a right to have access to your life. So stop stressing out so much about what other people are thinking.
So good.
All right, let's go to number 5. It's our last one. Okay, number 5 on helping fight against the invisible load. You must plan time for yourself. And Brandi talked about this a little bit when she was talking about going and getting her nails done and stuff. Our mental load, straight up, it comes from taking care of other people. So you have to plan time, and it has to be intentional. You have to intentionally plan time to take care of yourself away from others. So take a couple minutes this week. Figure out what fills your cup and makes you happy, and try to make that at one of your to-do list items for your week, just as much as doing laundry and doing dishes and going to work and taking care of your kids. They're going to see you take care of yourselves, and they're going to grow up to be adults who take care of themselves as well. You do not want your kids to watch you sacrifice for others all the time, and then they grow up to be these self-sacrificing adults who don't take care of themselves.
That's so good. That is so good. So we'll do a quick recap and we'll land this plane. So first, Guys, set clear expectations and boundaries, right? 2, release control. If somebody can do it 70% as good as you, let them.
Mhm.
3, practice meditation, prayer, and calming techniques. 4, stop comparing your life to others. 5, plan time for yourself, okay? You've got to fill your cup in order to be able to take care of others. At the end of the day, guys, we want you to know that we see you and we understand firsthand what it feels like to carry the invisible load as mothers, as women, as caregivers. We love our roles and responsibilities as leaders, wives, and mothers, and sometimes we just don't realize how much we carry and how it affects us and it
Mhm.
affects those around us.
Yeah. Last thing I want to say is Deuteronomy 31:8 says, "The Lord goes before you and he will fight for you." This is a special verse for me because I remember it whenever I'm having a hard time with the things that I'm struggling with. You have to remember that the small things that we put our focus on can sometimes pull our focus away from the big picture of our lives and can be a thief of joy. Don't ever let distraction or discouragement take the joy away from your life. You have the ability to change the daily habits of your life and find happiness in your daily life because we're all living the one life that we get. And remember, you are worthy, you are capable, you are beautiful, and we can't wait to watch you grow, girl.